KIX team at the Global Partnership for Education based in Washington, DC. With thanks in advance to our partners in KIX for organizing this symposium, the International Development Research Center. Today, you will hear about the significant strides made over the last 14 months since the first KIX Symposium last September in the two components that KIX locks together, the regional knowledge sharing hubs and the applied research program. This year, we are hearing not just from project partners, but also from ministry and country partners on how KIX identifies shared priorities of Southern education systems and how it generates and supports the use of evidence. This will be demonstrated through two panels on, first, early childhood education in Sub-Saharan Africa, and second, teacher professional development in Latin America and the Caribbean. We will also be hearing from members of the KIX Executive Committee, comprised of senior management from both the International Development Research Center and the Global Partnership for Education. But first, some quick housekeeping issues. Presenters will be speaking in English, French, and Spanish, so please select your language preference through the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen. This is the globe symbol to the bottom right of the screen. Kindly note that the session is being recorded and it will be posted on the KIX website at a later date. And we will not be able to engage in questions and answer sessions and encourage you to use the chat function if you have any technical issues, but also to pose any questions you may have that we will provide written responses to when the recording is made available. If you do pose questions, kindly include your name so that you can be identified. With that, and before we get going with the synopsis of KIX's progress over the last year, as well as the panels, I'm delighted to invite opening remarks from firstly, Julie Shouldis, Vice President for Strategy, Regions and Policy at the International Development Research Center, and Alice Albright, Chief Executive Officer at the Global Partnership for Education. Julie, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ian, and good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. In my previous role at Global Affairs Canada, I had the opportunity to meet Alice and to work with the Global Partnership for Education over a number of years, and to find this relationship again in my current role at IDRC, and to be able to talk about the important role of research in education is fantastic. And I'm so pleased to be here. And Alice, it's lovely to see you again. I'm going to speak in French, so I'm just warning interpreters and those who need to make a switch over that following the Canadian tradition, I'll do a bit, I started in English, but I will work now in French. Alors, c'est un plaisir de partager.
It is a pleasure to be with you for this opportunity and to welcome everyone to the second KIX Symposium. The IDRC is always delighted to work on KIX, which is a joint endeavor with the Global Partnership for Education. IDRC is an agency of the Canadian government that has supported research for development for 50 years. We are in the second year of our bold new 10-year strategy. In it, we made a long-term commitment to research in areas of education and science. KIX is the largest initiative within that division. This past year, we have witnessed two things in which I'd like to draw your attention in this symposium. First, the critical importance for evidence and innovation to improve education access and quality in this time, particularly to address gender equality and inclusivity. Secondly, the unique opportunity KIX offers to respond to Southern priorities and potentially fast-track the evidence to policy process through consistent engagement with national policy actors. To my first point, in every sector, the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted progress toward the SDGs and highlighted critical failures and gendered inequalities. And I believe that you all know that this is the case, but it also provides opportunities to see evidence and innovation and to make a difference. This has been particularly so in education, as we've seen it in KIX. Countries across the world grappled with how to support learning while schools were shut. This is exactly what I had to deal with my children as well. Through KIX, country representatives shared experiences on the impact of the pandemic on equity in education. They picked up ideas from each other on how to assess student learning and how they could support teachers. The pandemic made KIX's applied research on distance learning for teachers' professional development even more relevant and urgent. Given the very different impacts of the pandemic on children of different genders, we are especially happy with the launch of 8 new projects focused on gender equality in education. For instance, on gender-sensitive pedagogies, education options for girls who are out of school. Secondly, for the IDRC, one of the unique aspects of KIX is the extensive, direct, and sustained engagement with people who work in the education system supported through GPE. Many of you tuning in today participate in KIX's regional hubs. Through the hubs, you are setting your own agendas for peer learning and engaging with evidence. Hubs are a truly exciting structure for knowledge sharing and mobilization. National input into the hubs also define the topics for the applied research projects that KIX now funds. In this, KIX has had the unique opportunity to build a knowledge and innovation agenda directly from the priorities of Southern education systems. We trust that this design ensures the work is relevant. Our intention is for the research to respond directly to education stakeholder needs and to support and potentially fast-track the evidence to policy process. You'll hear from promising examples in today's symposium. And overall, in IDRC, we believe in building evidence in the South with Southern researchers, sharing knowledge with the research community and policymakers to inform local and global action and mobilizing alliances to drive positive global change. We're thrilled to be working with you, Alice, the Secretariat, and the whole Global Partnership for Education to realize this vision for the benefit of education systems. Thank you very much, and it is a pleasure to be here this morning. I look forward to the symposium. Thank you.
Alice, over to you, please.
Ian, I'm sorry, I missed what you just said.
Over to you, Alice.
Okay. Okay, let me just get my comments up here. Well, first of all, it's just a delight to be here with all of you, and Julie, to be seeing you again. I so remember well all the time that you spent on the GPE board and committees. You know, I have a particular attachment to KIX, and Ian knows this. It's because in our old office, my office was next to Ian's office, and in addition to having thought that KIX was a terrific idea and something that GPE could really, a concept that we could launch and add value to, because I sat next to Ian's office, I would often walk in there and say, "How's it going? How's it going?" And I was so happy to see it get launched and continue to take shape. So I'm delighted to be here with all of you today and check in and see how it's going. But a lot has happened in the last year, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing all the details. Before focusing on some of the highlights of that progress, for those of you who may be a bit less familiar with GPE, the Global Partnership for Education, is a shared commitment to ending the world's learning crisis. And we do this by mobilizing partners and funds to support, at the moment, 76 lower income countries to transform their education systems so that every boy and every girl can get access to a quality education and unlock their future potential and begin to contribute to a better world. In our last year, which was a very busy one, we adopted a bold new strategic plan, which we call GPE 2025. That's all about transforming education. We've refined our operating model to deliver on the strategic plan. And following a remarkable summit in July in London, virtual and physical, which was co-hosted by the UK and Kenya, Prime Minister Johnson and President Kenyatta, GPE, as far as the donor funding is concerned, has refinanced itself to the tune of $4 billion over the next 5 years. And of course, we have $1 billion to go, but we will continue on that chore. And throughout, we have maintained our support for partner countries as they continue to grapple with the challenges stemming from COVID-19. Our new strategy and our operating model drives systems transformation and sharpens GPE's unique abilities to support countries to make large-scale changes in education that will help more boys and girls get into school and learning the skills that they need to thrive in the 21st century. We're very focused on the country level and our country level work and engagement. And our country level objectives to achieve our overall goals include strengthening country ownership and capacity, to ensure lasting change, to adapt and to learn, which is really where KIX comes in, and to implement and achieve results at scale. We're also incredibly focused on gender. And so our overall objectives include strengthening gender responsive planning and policy development on a systems-wide basis. So to this end, as far as gender is concerned, we are hardwiring gender throughout our operating model. We're helping to identify and understand the barriers that prevent girls and boys from learning. We're working tirelessly to eliminate gender bias. We also are looking to mobilize partners to invest in evidence-based policies and interventions that can drive system transformation. And we're working across all sectors to help shape an overall environment and ecosystem with the right conditions for all girls and all boys to learn and reach their potential. So gender is very much at the heart of how we think about and conduct our work. Going back now a couple of years, KIX was created in response to a very particular demand. And this was a demand from partner governments for a way to systematically and on an evidence-based basis learn from one another and draw from the expertise that was across the partnership to address the most pressing policy challenges that they saw in their education sectors. And it was also intended to ensure that education finance supports evidence-based interventions that secure results at a national level. So KIX is very much about evidence and making sure that the financing necessary to identify that evidence and share it is available. So we're also very pleased now with the launch of 8 new projects, some very much in particular focused on gender equality that Julie mentioned. So overall, KIX is a fundamental commitment to evidence, evidence use, and evidence-informed policy dialogue. And if you think about the overall construct of GPE, one of the things that jumps off the page is its breadth and being able to draw on all different corners of the partnership to mobilize evidence really puts the best foot forward of GPE. So it's just a delight to see this all coming into place. There is a second annual report for KIX, and from it we know that that there are KIX regional hubs. They're demonstrating value to policymakers. There's now been 58 knowledge exchange activities, and we've involved nearly 4,500 participants. So KIX is up, it's real, it's going, and there's a lot of activity going on. Just to give you a couple of examples, country representatives from Lesotho and Kenya report using information from a learning assessment exchange in their policy dialogues. Representatives from Senegal and Chad have reported on an event on gender mainstreaming to be directly related to the challenges that they were both facing. And a Tajik colleague identified an approach from Georgia to be directly applicable to the needs in the Tajik education system. So these are examples of how a knowledge and innovation exchange platform is beginning to really create value. This value has also been seen through increased engagement by the national delegations, KIX delegations, in their own regional hubs, despite the particular challenges of COVID. So I very much look forward to hearing today from Ministry of Education friends and partners on how KIX is doing, how it's helping to generate, curate, and use evidence in the national policy level processes. And I'm particularly keen to see if the dream that was we all had now several years ago is becoming a reality. And I think the answer to that question is probably yes. I'd like to end by taking an opportunity to thank the volume and the breadth of partners who are now involved in KIX, because it is an enormous group. Starting with the global and regional organizations for running the 4 regional KIX hubs, the multilateral, non-governmental, and academic institutions who are implementing the global grants, the Southern-based universities, think tanks, and civil society organizations, all engaged in implementing the regional grants. Like to thank over 120 different institutions who are collaborating throughout KIX, working in nearly 70 countries to help all of us as a partnership reach our common goal and purpose of a quality education for every girl and boy. I'd also would like to acknowledge the 250 plus ministry friends and country partners who regularly exchange knowledge, expertise, and learning through their hubs, who are continuously engaged in different applied research programs, not only in gender equality, but in other critical areas such as teaching and learning, early childhood education, and data systems. So we have designed KIX to leverage the broader partnership, and clearly, even though that is only in its 2nd year of operations, it is doing so. We're also absolutely thrilled and honored and privileged to be working with the IDRC. They are an extraordinary partner. When we were at the beginning stages of this, we sought an organization who could help us implement KIX. And at that time, we were not fully aware of how much KIX would benefit from IDRC's expertise in scaling innovations. We are now fully aware. And IDRC has brought so much to this, particularly in areas of gender responsiveness and how to collaborate effectively with foundations. For example, we could not be more delighted to be working with you at IDRC. I'm also very excited to see the contributions that KIX will make as we move forward with, we're fully implementing GPE 2025, but as we really continue along that journey, KIX will play a critical role. I want to reflect on the particular moment that we're in right now, an ongoing pandemic, the need to recover ground on gender equality, the need to continue to connect education as one of the key drivers for contending with climate change, and for a variety of reasons, ongoing high levels of children who are encountering forced displacement or becoming refugees. All of this adds up to an incredibly daunting set of challenges for the education sector, but I'm confident that working together, including using key platforms such as KIX, we can meet our collective responsibility to giving the world's children a quality education. So thank you. I know that all of you have spent an enormous amount of time making KIX a reality and maximizing its value to our collective purpose. And I thank you all so much for everything that you've been doing to make it a success. And Ian, I want to thank you in particular. You've just been at this for a long, long time, and I want to congratulate you. So let me stop there and turn it back over to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both Julie and Alice for the opening remarks and for setting the tone for our symposium. Let's pass straight over now to Tricia Wind, who is the KIX program lead at the International Development Research Center, for a global overview of KIX's progress over the last year. So Trish, over to you.
Thanks, Ian. And thanks very much to Julie and to Alice. You can go to the next slide. Today's symposium follows many steps of getting KIX's regional knowledge sharing hubs and applied research projects in motion. Now, this has not been, of course, completely straightforward over the past 18 months, but we have witnessed progress toward the overall purpose of facilitating opportunities for countries to learn from one another, to strengthen capacities, and to generate evidence and innovation to improve education policy and practice. You'll see in the map on the slide the colors of the 4 regional hubs, in which people from ministries of education and other stakeholders meet together for peer learning and exchange. At the year 1 mark, 2/3 of GPE partner countries had started to engage in the hubs to a moderate or high level. Representatives reported that the hubs were relevant to their needs, that they provided unique opportunities to exchange information and ideas, and that the resources that were being produced were useful. We want to salute the creativity and commitment of the organizations that are facilitating the hubs. That includes UNESCO's ICPA Institute, UNICEF's regional office in Nairobi, the African Union, l'Institut de la Francophonie pour la Formation et l'Éducation, plus Confemen and l'AUF, NORAG, SUMA, and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. We also greatly admire the tenacity of country representatives who make the most of the hubs, despite the challenges of having to do all this online. And I know a lot of the people who have just joined in and are saying hello in the chat today are all involved in those regional hubs. You are welcome. As of today, in the next slide, over 50 countries have nominated their national delegations. Those are the people who agree to participate in hubs on an ongoing basis, to bring their priorities and experience into regional knowledge sharing and to bring insights from the hubs back into their contexts. Hubs have convened dozens of events for peer learning, 58 and counting. Some of them are intentionally small, targeted, and technical. Others are big open webinars. For example, in a recent roundtable in West and Central Africa, 5 different countries discussed their approaches to teacher recruitment and training. The Europe, Asia, and the Pacific Hub just wrapped up their Education Policy and Innovation Conference, which included a focus on responses to COVID-19 and digital learning, plus gender equality and social inclusion issues in their regions. Hubs also have convened longer-term processes. We'll hear shortly about a community of practice that was focused on early childhood education. In Europe, Asia, and Pacific's learning cycles, country representatives receive support from international experts to produce good quality analysis about policy initiatives and innovations in their countries. They do so in groups with people from other countries, so they learn from one another as they go along. And when they're finished, they share their outputs and studies within the hub and beyond. Together, over 3,000 people from GPE member countries have participated in the hubs, about 4,300 globally. The hubs have produced close to 100 different knowledge products, and those include studies, but also products that are easy to digest and share, like videos or interviews or podcasts. The regional hubs began last year, and there are indications that country representatives are finding them useful. For instance, when representatives from Uganda could pick up ideas from Botswana's experience of using UNESCO's school reopening guidelines for the pandemic, when Dominica uses the reports from the hubs in their education sector planning, or when colleagues in the Gambia found Ghana's approach to teachers' continuing professional development relevant to their context. The whole purpose of hubs is to support the consideration and use of evidence back at the national level. So these are the kinds of results that we want to continue to support and deepen as we go along. The next slide. Education priorities surfaced through the hubs also directly informed the calls for proposals that we ran over the last 18 months. So in this, KIX is funding a Southern Knowledge and Innovation Agenda. There are 36 applied research projects now with activities in 53 countries. And again, I know that some of you online today are working on those projects. Along the main themes, you'll see is teacher professional development, a top priority from each of the regions. Gender equality also cross-cuts the whole portfolio and is also the central focus of the second largest cluster of projects on gender-sensitive pedagogies, on preventing sexual and gender-based violence in schools, or options to support girls who are out of school to continue their education. Thanks to funding from the LEGO Foundation to GPE, we were also able to put out a special call on early learning this year, and 5 new projects will start in early 2022. All the projects are building solid evidence, contextually nuanced to the realities of member countries. They do so in an applied and engaged way, working alongside people who can use the knowledge and capacity as they go along, whether that be ministry officials, teachers, administrators, or even parents. We thought it would be interesting for you to hear more specific examples, so we're going to spend the majority of today's event in 2 panels that give a flavor of how regional hubs identify and respond to the shared policy challenges of member countries, examples of projects that are addressing those challenges, and we'll hear how country and regional actors are taking advantage of the opportunities and evidence that KIX is generating. So let's move straight into those panels.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Trish. As Trish just mentioned, we will now move into the first deep dive panel on early childhood education in Sub-Saharan Africa. And the panel will be moderated by Joy Nafungo, who is the KIX Program Officer at the IDRC based in Nairobi, Kenya. who will also introduce the different panelists. So Joy, with thanks, over to you.
Thank you, Ian. Greetings, everyone. As Ian has mentioned, my name is Joy Nafungo. I am the Senior Program Officer for the GPE KIX program at IDRC. I am based here in IDRC's East and Southern Africa Regional Office in Nairobi. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm happy to be moderating this session on early childhood education in the KIX Africa 19 region, which is basically East, West, and South African region. As you have heard from the previous speakers, KIX responds to the needs of partner countries, and early childhood education was identified as a top priority for countries involved in the Africa 19 Hub. This is because of the role of early childhood education in the holistic development of a child's social, emotional, cognitive, and physical needs, and in building a solid, broad foundation for lifelong learning and well-being. So on this panel, we have experts who work in the region, in the Africa 19 region and the whole of Africa region, and who are currently working closely with KIX to strengthen ECE, early childhood education. So we are going to focus on how knowledge on ECE is being generated, and also we'll hear how national delegations are sharing and using this knowledge. So first up is Dr. Leone Okengo from the African Early Childhood Network, and she will be talking about priority identification and the role of research in addressing existing knowledge gaps in ECE. If I may introduce Dr. Leone. Dr. Leone Okengo is the founder and executive director of the African Early Childhood Network, where she leads advocacy efforts for greater investment in young children and their families for a prosperous and peaceful Africa. Dr. Okengo's professional experience spans over 20 years in policy, program design, evaluation, advocacy, and capacity building, having worked previously with various international and national organizations. Leone also makes significant contributions in strengthening collaborative action to embed the early years in continental policies, plans, and actions. And Leone also serves as a member of the technical team for KIX Africa 19 Hub. She has a PhD in early childhood studies from Kenyatta University. Over to you, Dr. Okengo.
Thank you very much, Joy, for that introduction. It is an honor to be here and to be working with KIX. Next slide. I will take the next few minutes to highlight the early childhood education in the KIX Africa region and share some key lessons from the ECE communities of practice and the hub conducted in collaboration with us. Next slide, please. Next slide. Allow me first to share a little bit about the Africa Early Childhood Network. AFCAN is an advocacy platform that collaborates with various actors, including the Africa Union member states, civil society organizations, academia, the private sector at national and regional level to champion the rights of children. AFCAN is honored to be coordinating the Africa Union CESA cluster for early childhood education and development. In this endeavor, we work very closely with several partners through 4 working groups that are chaired by AU member states and convened by key partners. Our work seeks to enhance regional advocacy to ensure high-level support and financing to early childhood programs, collaboration with national advocacy partners in 20 countries to strengthen national advocacy, implementation research, and support to development of resources that can be useful to support the ECE workforce. Next slide. So why should we invest in early childhood education? Allow me to put it this way. Unless we invest in improving early childhood outcomes, all investments we make later on will be on shaky ground. Sustained investment in quality, equitable, and inclusive early childhood education will go a long way in preparing the foundation for future learning and development, increasing efficiency in the education system, and contributing to positive human capital outcomes and economic growth, breaking the cycle of intergenerational poverty and poor developmental outcomes, to mention just a few benefits. Next slide. So what is the situation in the region? Over the past few years, we have seen a slow increase in access to early childhood education. We've seen an increase from about 20% in the year 2000 to around 30% in 2017, with great disparities across and within countries. Much of the progress can be attributed to increased awareness and prioritization of early childhood in government policies and national education plans. We are now seeing more countries including early years as part of the basic education structure, more countries institutionalizing the training of teachers, and greater attention to development of curriculum. However, much more still needs to be done to increase access, equity, and quality across the region. It's sad to say that over 70% of the children in our region do not access early learning services. Equity and quality continue to be a huge challenge. Next slide, please. Special attention needs to be placed on increasing access to children from low wealth quintiles, because they are 8 times less likely than children from the wealthiest families to access services. Children from hard to reach areas, fragile and conflict environments, all these report very low access rates. We also need to do much more to strengthen inclusion of children with special needs. In addition, it's critically important to improve the quality of programs, paying close attention to both the structural and process aspects, and very importantly, improving the welfare and working conditions of the workforce, strengthening governance and coordination across programs and across levels, enhancing accountability and management, and very importantly, to improve the quality of research and evidence to support policy and program design, as well as continuous learning. Next slide. Allow me now to focus a little more on research, which is really at the heart of KIX Africa. Research plays a critical role in understanding the situation and contexts of children, the services, and generally the system as a whole. Research guides the development of policies and programs to ensure contextual relevance, prioritization, continued improvement, efficient allocation of resources, and generating and strengthening innovations. Through knowledge sharing and exchange, we see increased learning that has a likelihood of improving service delivery. The KIX Africa 19 mapping played a critical role in supporting the prioritization of ECE in the region by KIX. Increased resource allocation, as seen through the recent KIX call on early learning, workforce development through various teacher professional development approaches, appropriate teaching and learning methods such as play-based approaches, strengthened partnership and multi-sectoral collaboration, tracking early learning child development outcomes. Research facilitates sharing of knowledge, best practices for learning and improved service delivery. And this is fundamentally important because there's a great need for South-South knowledge sharing to ensure quality program design and implementation. Next slide, please. Lastly, I will highlight one takeaway from the KIX Africa 19 Community of Practice session on ECE and key messages we would like to pass. We agree that realizing better early childhood education outcomes requires a systems approach. What are the different parts and how do these different parts work together? With effective planning and financing, including integration of ECE into government policies and programs and plans, appropriate curriculum and assessment, including adoption of play-based approaches, strengthening the ECE workforce, including improved terms and conditions of service, building strong community and parent engagement, and really just a strong quality assurance system that has very strong M&E components. Next slide. So it has been a pleasure working with the KIX Hub And we are really glad to be part of this. Thank you very much. Over to you, Joy.
Thank you, Dr. Okengo. Before you go, I have a follow-up question for you. First of all, thank you for that broad and deep overview of the status of ECE in Africa 19 region, and also for highlighting the role of research in not only identifying ECE priorities, but also addressing some gaps in ECE. So my question is, you highlight the importance of research, particularly for service delivery in ECE. Could you tell us in 1 minute about how KIX funded ECE research projects can contribute to strengthening service delivery at different levels, national, community level, school level, etc. Over to you, Lynette.
Thank you, Joy. From the very start of projects, it is important to lobby, advocate, and make sure that all the key actors are on board. In the absence of strong political commitment, we really cannot talk about allocation of resources. For this to happen, it is necessary to share proven strategies, innovative ideas, because these are the ones that will power advocacy activities. In addition to this, KIX-funded projects can also contribute to providing evidence that can be used to address challenges that we continue to face in the region, such as how to improve policy and regulatory frameworks, how to improve planning and financing of early childhood programs, how to promote inclusive early childhood education, how to make the teaching and learning process more effective, including play-based approaches. KIX-funded projects provide examples that can be used to make it easier for all the people that are designing and planning programs across the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynette. We appreciate your insights. The next presentation will focus on knowledge production and evidence use for strengthened education systems. The presentation will highlight how KIX projects generate evidence and how this evidence is used at a national level. So for this, we are going to hear from one of KIX global projects, the KIX Better Early Learning Development at Scale project, otherwise known as the BELLS project by UNICEF, and a specific example of BELLS in Sierra Leone. So this session will be co-presented by Mercy Tucker and Melody Martin. Allow me to introduce Mercy and Melody. Madam Melody Martin is the Assistant Director of Pre-Primary and Primary Education in the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education in Sierra Leone. She provides ministerial leadership in implementing ECCE, ECE, ECD, intersectoral activities across line ministries. She also supports national and international consultancies to develop the national ECC policy documents inscribed in Sierra Leone's Education Sector Plan of 2014. Mr. Mercy Tucker possesses 9 years of progressive experience in education in emergencies, early learning, and girls' education. Mercy currently provides professional, technical, operational, and administrative assistance throughout the programming process for early childhood education programs in UNICEF Sierra Leone. Over to you, Mercy and Melody.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Joy, and for the introduction. I am actually here with Melody. And I would like to begin by giving a brief overview of pre-primary policy status and access rate in Sierra Leone. The Sierra Leone Education Policy 2010 states that preschool education is for children aged 3 to 5 years old, and it shall be free and compulsory. However, as you can see on the slides, the gross intake rate of 23.4% indicate that most children at age 3 are not attending primary school at all. And also the gross enrollment rate is at 19%. And of that 19%, 52% are girls. Yeah. Overall, this rate reflects that the limited capacity of the education system to cater for the pre-primary school age population, yeah? And low rates are also attributed to the concentration of preschools in cities and urban towns compared to the rural areas. Most of the preschools are concentrated in cities and urban towns. The 2020 education sector analysis also shows a very low government provision of compulsory and free pre-primary education. Next slide, please. In terms of pre-primary governance and financing, it is the responsibility of the Ministry of the Basic and Senior Secondary Education to lead the planning, implementation, monitoring, and regulation of pre-primary education in close collaboration with other partners, one of which is UNICEF. As at now, 7 tertiary institutions provide pre-service training in early childhood care and education, while in-service teacher training is mostly funded by development partners. 2% of basic education budget is allocated to pre-primary education. It is also worth noting that 53% of pre-primary children are enrolled in pre-primary schools are not approved by the government, and 63% are enrolled in schools that do not receive financial support from the government. An ECD unit, the Early Childhood Development Unit, leads, this unit sits in the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, and it leads the planning and implementation of pre-primary education and intersectoral ECD coordination. We believe that the lack of financial support to pre-primary schools has important implications regarding the quality of pre-primary education in Sierra Leone. Next slide, please. My colleague Melody, and we now take it from here.
Thank you, Mercy. I will now speak briefly about the KIX Bells projects that we are implementing in Sierra Leone in close collaboration with UNICEF. The objective of the KIX Bells project is to, 1, integrate ECE systematically into ESP processes. 2, build capacity of national education systems to effectively plan for the implementation of ECE programs. Next slide. Here are the expected outcomes of the BELS project in Sierra Leone. Well, presently, they are not expected. They have been actualized. Examples from other countries provided in the ECD Accelerator Toolkit guided us in establishing the technical working group and shaping the terms of reference for this group. Additionally, we use the tools in the ECD Accelerator Toolkit, helping us in identifying the challenges, strategies, and activities that shaped the early childhood development and pre-primary education chapter of the education sector plan, which is currently being validated as we speak this afternoon. And also, we'll see that in the next presentation. Next slide. Since the inception of this KIX project, there have been key achievements. 1, we are able to set up a technical working group. The purpose of the technical working group is to provide a platform where stakeholders can share information and discuss issues to create an enabling environment for pre-primary education by strengthening the following 4 aspects of the subsector. 1, policies and legislation. 2, financing. 3, ministerial leadership and capacity. 3, public demand. The second outcome is that we've conducted 6 workshops with our pre-primary education technical working group from April 2021 to October 21st. During these workshops, various tools in the ECE Accelerator Toolkit were piloted. Lastly, we had a joint advocacy for pre-primary education to be included in the government's agenda. We are very glad to announce to you that as we speak this afternoon, there is a validation going on at Bintumani Hotel, which includes our minister, and we have succeeded in having a chapter on pre-primary education in the education sector plan 2022 to 2026. Next slide, please. A key outcome of the BELS project is the work of the technical working group that resulted to the development of the ESP drafts that is sub-sectoral than the previous ESPs that we have been having. The overall goal of the draft PPE ESP chapter is to increase access to quality pre-primary education for all children, especially the most marginalized. The draft chapter for PP was built around the 5 core functions and enabling environment factors that make a strong pre-primary subsector built around 6 thematic objectives with strategies and activities to address them. The 5 core functions came from the build to last framework and pre-primary subsection analysis, and the toolkit supported the development of a comprehensive ECE subsector plan. The experience of using the toolkit is being documented in a case study. Next slide. Finally, what have we learned during this process? One of the things we have learned is that using the toolkit, the ECE Accelerated Toolkit has helped us in identifying our challenges in the pre-primary education subsector in Sierra Leone, as well as prioritizing them for inclusion in the pre-primary education chapter of the education sector plan. The tools also helped and guided us to develop strategies and activities to address these challenges in the education sector plan, moving from a wishful list to a chapter that is focused and relevant. Second outcome, we established a smaller writing team from the larger pre-primary education technical working group, which developed the ECD and pre-primary education chapter of the ESP, which made it easier for us to have ideas more focused, building on outcomes from the first 3 workshops where the subsector was analyzed. And thirdly, the use of the other data sources such as education sector analysis and annual school census, in addition to reflections from using the tools in the education sector in the ECE Accelerated Toolkit, enriched the process and raised awareness amongst the technical working group on the key issues in the sex sector. Next slide. Thank you, and over to you, Joy.
Thank you, Mercy and Melody, for sharing more about the BELS toolkit and also how useful BELS is in the Sierra Leone context. And also congratulations on the validation of the pre-primary chapter. That's great news. I just have one quick follow-up question in the interest of time, just 1 minute. You mentioned that several activities were conducted by BELS to ensure the integration of the ECE Accelerator Toolkits into the subsector policy. Could you please just briefly share more about the approach and methodology that you used, particularly during the co-creation workshops? Over to you,
Yes,
Mercy, Melody. Yeah.
Thank you. BELS used several participatory methodologies, including small and big groups, plenary sessions, gallery walks, video clips from the ECE Accelerated Toolkit, as well as daily reflection after each day. We reflected on one thing I have learned and one thing I have a question on during our plenary sessions. During workshops, participants provided feedback on tools used after each workshop to ensure everyone understood how relevant the tools will be in the Sierra Leonean context. Thank you. Over to you, Mercy.
Thank you, Mercy and Melody, for your availability to share. Yes, Mercy, I think you wanted to come in.
Thank you very much, Joy, and we are happy to be part of this symposium. Over to you.
Indeed, and thank you for participating. We appreciate your willingness to be part of this. And lastly, we will hear from Madam Anne Gatia on cross-country knowledge sharing and use. Anne will not only focus on ECE, but will also present more broadly about KIX and KIX hubs, particularly at a national level. And this is an example from Kenya. So Anne will tell us more about the relevance of KIX to Kenya and also her role as the Africa 19 KIX focal point. A brief introduction, Madam Anne Gatia is the Principal Assessment Officer at the Kenya National Examinations Council. She's also the coordinator of the competency-based assessment and also the Africa 19 KIX focal point. Over to you, Anne.
Thank you so much, Joy. It is my pleasure to be part of this symposium. I will take us through the role of KIX Africa 19 in facilitating sharing and use across the countries. Next slide, please. My role as a focal point for KIX Africa 19 Hub, where there's a membership of 18 countries, is that liaison between hubs and countries, and more specifically, we act as a link to the national education policy makers, the practitioners, the local education groups. We also report back to the key education stakeholders regarding all the hub activities as we mobilize participation of these stakeholders in all the hub activities. Secondly, we also participate in knowledge sharing across the thematic areas of the hub and the country priority areas. The hub conducts a series of activities to facilitate knowledge sharing, and it is our role to participate and recommend colleagues at the ministry to be able to participate in such key events. Lastly, we champion new approaches across various thematic areas where our role is to support the hub's agenda by helping identify priorities in our respective countries and working closely with the hub to develop topics of discussion and new approaches across the 6 thematic areas. Next slide, please. Each KIX regional hubs works with a national delegation at a country level, which is composed of 5 members with representation from the ministry officers and also the local education group. As a member of the Kenya National Delegation, KIX Hub has been useful to us in the following ways. Hubs have been opportunities for us to research and enhance evidence-based policies in education in Kenya. This has been through surveys and assessments in close collaboration with national delegates to identify priorities, best practices, innovations in our respective countries. Hubs are also a good platform where knowledge is shared among countries and other stakeholders across the globe. Hub activities have also been offering capacity building opportunities for national delegates. For example, we have had a series of community of practices that were actually an opportunity to hear from the thematic experts. The hub also promotes co-creation and networking for national delegation, where we meet colleagues from other countries and share experiences, as well as learn from them. Hubs also have offered useful learning moments through case studies from different countries, lessons, best practices in the various thematic areas from both KIX regional and global projects, and also other regional educational innovations. Next slide, please. Overall, the main activities of the hub have been having webinars on different topics across thematic areas, which have been conducted by the hub in close collaboration with local education groups and other education stakeholders. Other activities that have been held are the community of practice sessions on several thematic areas, including the early childhood education, competency-based curriculum, teaching and learning, learning assessments, education management information systems, where Kenya was highly represented in all these sessions of the communities of practice. Surveys and rapid assessments were also part of the activities of the hub, where we were able to, as a country, to identify priorities and our best practices and even innovations that are within our country. And lastly, KIX global projects as case studies on stakeholder engagement and scaling of innovations into policy. Next slide, please. I would now want to give an overview of the KIX at a national level and how Kenya is involved in KIX. Hubs are a KIX mechanism that offer platform for Kenya to share progress with other countries. Through the KIX Observatory, we share our country's progress and learn from other countries. For example, we were able to learn quite a lot on how to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic during the school closures, how to reopen the schools, how to embrace e-learning, and how to cope with stress, both for our teachers our learners, and even all those that were involved in the education stakeholders, including parents. Through international conferences on various topics, we not only learned from others, but we were also able to share our progress across the thematic areas. KIX has also been offering funding opportunities through the global and regional projects that seek to generate lessons that would be very useful for policy and practice. The KIX bulletins provide information and new items on what is happening within the KIX and the KIX partners, where we also learn from. The KIX Africa 19 Hub conducts communities of practice across several thematic areas where Kenya really has participated fully.
Sorry, Anne, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You only have 1 minute to conclude.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, Kenya has been able to conduct the first KIX National Dialogue on the 22nd September. In terms of early childhood education, there have been several lessons that we have been able to learn. Next slide, please. The use of a standardized assessment tool, effective planning and financing of the ECE programs, adoption of integrated approach to early childhood curriculum, promotion of inclusive education, among others. And finally, in my role as a coordinator for the competency-based assessment in Kenya, we have a lot of takeaways from the communities of practice that was facilitated by the CPC experts. Among them is that we were able to learn the different phases of designing competency-based education, including teacher professional development and competency-based assessment. We were also able to learn how to monitor and evaluate the competency-based curriculum. We were also able to learn new domains of assessment, like the Borough Policy Assessment Tool, and how to align our assessments to the 21st century scale. Thank you so much. This brings me to the end of my presentation. Over to you, Joy.
Thank you, Anne, for helping us learn more about your role as a KIX focal point, your collaboration with Africa 19 KIX Hub, as well as the relevance of the hub to your role at a national level. So this brings us to the end of the session on early childhood education. Just to emphasize again that ECE is an important priority to KIX, and in a bid to strengthen these efforts at the national and regional levels and also global levels, as mentioned earlier by Tricia, we are currently in the process of funding additional 5 projects focusing on early learning in Africa 19. These projects begin early 2022, and we will continue supporting KIX grantees and partners to integrate these lessons, emerging lessons from other projects, as well as evidence to continue strengthening their work within their respective contexts. So I wish to thank the panelists for taking a deep dive into this very important topic. Thank you all for listening, and back to you, Ian.
Thank you so much, Joy, and to all the panelists. I'm only sorry that we are not able to stay longer to have more discussion about this, but the richness of the work is extraordinary. And just to echo the congratulations to the Sierra Leone colleagues for the validation event taking place this afternoon. Thank you again. So moving swiftly forward to our second deep dive, this will be a panel on teacher professional development in Latin America and the Caribbean, from knowledge gaps to applied solutions. And this session will be moderated by Ivana Zacharias from the KIX Regional Hub for Latin America and the Caribbean. And as before with Joy, Ivana will also introduce the different panelists. So with that, Ivana, over to you, please.
Muchas gracias, Ian. Muchas gracias a IDRC.
Thank you so much, Ian. Thank you so much to the IDRC. As Ian was saying, we will discuss now teacher professional development. Dr. Gloria Menjivar, Vice Minister of Education of Honduras, will discuss the teacher professional development and political processes in Honduras. She will share a video with us. Secondly, We will listen from the Director of Policies and Education Crises, Dante Castillo. They have a program in Honduras, and then we will listen to Joel Warrican, Dean of the School of Education of the University of the West Indies in Barbados, member of the KIX LAC Advisory Board. Firstly, I'd like to share with you the work that the Hub has carried out in the region. Could you please upload the presentation? At the regional center, the KIX LAC, we are working with an intervention model that is based on 3 pillars. Firstly, on setting the public policy agenda for the region. On the other hand, the mobilization of knowledge and exchange. And thirdly, the development of regional and local capabilities to work in different educational areas. With regards to the setting of the political agenda, the center has been working, the Hub has been working to identify the main challenges found in the region. To that effect, we have carried out studies in the different countries that are members of the regional hub. We also have carried out baseline surveys with our members. They provided us information as to their priorities. We also do reviews of the literature available. We meet with representatives on bilateral meetings. We also hold multilateral meetings. We've had several roundtables. During a year and a half then, we were able to identify 3 priorities for the region. On the one hand, teacher professional development, which is the focus of this panel. Secondly, what has to do with COVID-19 and education, what has to do with the new skills that are required, and what is the impact of COVID-19 on learning, the challenges ahead, what we can do to be ready for similar scenarios, and thirdly, the strengthening of public education. The first issue we worked on was teacher professional development, or TPD, and we deep dived on the development of policies, literature reviews, and the second pillar on mobilization of knowledge and exchanges. We had an international conference. We had workshops with teacher unions and teacher universities. We carried out different KIX meetings where members were able to share their experiences with TPD in their respective territories. And then with regards to the third pillar, the strengthening of local and regional capacities, we had workshops, as you will see on the next slide, by working with different organizations, for example, UNESCO, through its teacher task force. 2 weeks ago, we were able to host a workshop for KIX LAC representatives working at ministries of education. Based on all of this work, we established partnerships not only with UNESCO, but also with other organizations, of course, with the government of Honduras. The minister will share with us the work we've been doing. And the projects that are being undertaken through grants from KIX Global. You will also listen about this from Dante Castillo and the work we are doing with the University of the West Indies. This is what Dr. Joel Warrington will discuss. What did we find during this year and a half of work with regards to TPD? Next slide, please. Firstly, there is high consensus on the importance of improving teaching in order to improve the quality of education and equity in education. This is very important. It was the main issue throughout the documents we worked on. Mostly on the baseline survey we carried out with all of the representatives independently from the organization for which they worked, whether it was a union or a ministry. Secondly, another issue is a demand for more and better teacher training. In particular, this is linked with the context of the pandemic. There are new demands, new concerns that need to be addressed through new trainings. Thirdly, and this is something that we see very markedly in our research, and also it's something that we have heard from representatives, there is a need to improve the working conditions of teachers in Latin America and the Caribbean. We know that the salaries of teachers in the region are low. We know many teachers work in more than one institution so as to be able to have a decent salary. This affects their possibilities of prepare for classes, to have exchanges with other teachers, to discuss maybe challenges. So it is necessary to reconsider the institutional arrangements so that teachers can have a healthier job. And the last point has to do with gender and the importance of gender mainstreaming in the teaching profession, as this is a profession that for the most part has women in it. It is very hard to solve the issues ahead if we do not consider the fact that it is mostly women who are in the profession at present. Now I'll give the floor to Dr. Gloria Meijivar. She has sent us a video and I invite you to listen to her.
Para cada uno de los presentes que nos acompañan desde algún lugar del mundo, envío desde Honduras un fraternal saludo. Quiero comentarles que como Secretaría de Educación de Honduras nos sentimos muy satisfechos de estar participando con los amigos que lideran el intercambio de conocimiento e innovación KIX de la Alianza Global para la Educación. Así que gracias por habernos invitado a participar en el proceso mediante el cual se identificaron las prioridades regionales para el conocimiento y la innovación en el tema educativo en los diferentes países miembros de la GPE, siendo uno de ellos nuestro país, Honduras. Sin duda alguna que su apoyo ha venido a fortalecer la capacidad institucional de la Secretaría de Educación en cuanto a los proyectos KIX, los cuales tienen como objetivo desarrollar y movilizar conocimiento basado en enfoques prometedores o que se hayan demostrado que mejoran la educación. Les comparto lo siguiente. El otro proyecto con el cual ya se ha iniciado a trabajar a través de la Dirección General de Desarrollo Profesional es adaptando y ampliando la escala de la tutoría entre pares de maestros y líderes escolares para una educación rural equitativa. Como Secretaría de Educación se ha considerado implementar la formación de docentes con la metodología de mentoría, donde se formarán equipos de docentes experimentados como mentores para ser acompañantes de docentes noveles o docentes que requieran de un acompañamiento pedagógico en áreas de contenido o metodologías. Esta acción está planificada para ser desarrollada con un grupo focal con el objetivo de validar el manual para el año 2022 y luego implementarlo a nivel de redes educativas de forma escalonada. Es así que este proyecto se estaría abordando a partir de la implementación del manual de mentoría. Como Secretaría de Educación, nuestro compromiso es seguir trabajando para garantizar el derecho a la educación de los niñas, adolescentes y jóvenes de nuestro país mediante la implementación de las mejores estrategias para llevar y servir el pan del saber de acuerdo a nuestra modalidad que nos demanda esta emergencia provocada a causa de la COVID-19. Para lograr esa educación de calidad que todos los sistemas educativos del mundo queremos y necesitamos para nuestros educandos, lo podremos lograr si nos unimos, porque solo unidos seremos más fuertes. Es por ello que deseo agradecer a cada uno de los amigos de la cooperación internacional y en especial a ustedes, miembros que conforman a KIX de la Alianza Global para la Educación, por el apoyo brindado y por estos nuevos proyectos que estaremos desarrollando en beneficio de la educación de nuestros países. Muchas gracias por su atención.
As Tricia was saying, I take advantage of this opportunity to mention something the Vice Minister was saying about how using evidence allow them to work and decide the policies they will use in the next few years. This is something that we have been doing with KIX. We have been doing this. And now I'll give the floor to Mr. Dante Castillo, who's the Director for Innovative Practices at SUMA. Thank you, Ivana. Can you hear me? Thank you so much, Ivana.
First of all, many thanks to the GPE KIX initiative and the RDAC for this invitation to be part of the Second Annual KIX Symposium, especially to discuss the need to improve and develop new policies and initiatives for teacher professional development. I'm going to use that acronym TPD for teacher professional development. These preliminary findings come from a teacher professional development at scale project implemented by SUMA, FITED, and World Reader that is funded by the KIX initiative to pilot innovative approaches to adapt and scale teacher professional development models. And this is important, mediated by digital technologies. This project is being implemented in Honduras, Ghana, and Uzbekistan. This work is part of a larger effort conducted by the TPD at Scale Coalition for the Global South, and that seeks to improve the quality of in-service teacher training. The key question I would say here is how to address the issue of quality and equity on teacher professional development in particular in Latin America and the Caribbean. We know, as Ivana said in the introduction, that there are challenges associated with low quality training or low social status of the teaching profession or working conditions. This initiative basically aims to develop approaches for teacher professional development at scale. That is, approaches, I would say, that go a step forward and that take advantage of digital technologies to address some of the quality and equity challenges in TPD. The good thing, and I would say that there is a broad consensus in education policy and practices. I would say this part of this consensus is that teachers and their capacity is a key factor to improve learning for all students. In this sense, I would say most countries in Latin America have enacted policies to institutionalize various forms of TPD, and many of them integrating digital technologies. I would say this tech integration has tended to focus more on pedagogy than, for example, in modalities for TPD. So we think there is an opportunity here. It is important for us to distinguish the role that digital technologies play in the teaching and learning process versus the role that they can play to offer new modalities or alternatives for teacher training. As you know, probably a lot of most of the countries in the region have declared at some point or have said and enacted some educational policies or statements supporting TICS in some way. However, we think a new approach is needed in lack to basically to overcome what we say and what we call the unstructured way in which technology has been used for in-service teacher training. So in our work with the TPD at Scale Coalition, we have identified this approach as a teacher professional development at scale model to address some of this issue. Next slide, please. The TPD at Scale Coalition is a collaborative effort that attempts to join energies, evidence, and research from education and technology. The TPD at Scale offer, I would say, new hypotheses to work in the field. And this is how we have been advancing in our project in Honduras during the last couple of years. I want to recall kind of some key messages that this approach calls the attention. The first one is engage with TPD structures, which are embedded in the education system and with national institutional arrangement. I would say this project attempt to work with, national ministries, decentralized levels of education, and not work instead of this type of stakeholders and key actors. Second, design for scale, but localize TPD opportunities to reach all teachers. This is important because we have tried to avoid the approach, that one size fits all. So this means that it is important to match the potentialities and the possibilities of digital technologies with local teacher professional needs. Digital technologies in that way expand the possibilities for TPD, which is a kind of a radical change in the nature of delivery models of TPD. So the pandemic, for example, has shown us the need to reduce the digital gap, the limited capacity and infrastructure that countries have to rely on digital technology to continue education in time of crisis. And this effort needs to seek sustainability based on continuous adaptation and improvement. That is what we are doing precisely in Honduras, to pilot and test and study in order to identify the best way to proceed with TPD programs. So we think there is a need to balance equity, quality, and efficiency. More resources, we know, are needed to face more challenging and vulnerable conditions of teachers. Next slide, please. And finally, I would like to highlight some preliminary findings of in our project, and I would say that there is an increasing engagement, and probably the Undersecretary Gloria Menjivar was going to say part of this, an increasing engagement from the ministry to pilot and adopt the approach of TPD at scale, similar to what happened in Honduras, is what is going on in Ghana and Uzbekistan. So Honduras, I would say, is an example of this kind of support and engagement with this new approach. As you can imagine, the COVID pandemic, as I said, has shown the need to design new modalities for teaching and TPD, making use of technology. This has increased significantly the number of teachers taking the courses, in Honduras, in the national platform for teacher training, the IDRC platform. we have seen a good disposition among stakeholders to tailor the provision of TPD. For example, in rural areas, the role of a mobile phone might have a great impact, or the role of social media, such as WhatsApp, that is what we have seen, or those with better connectivity to access interactive resources, platform for teacher training and so on. And lastly, we can say that we have seen that it's very important to advance, and that is the experience we have looking at in Honduras, is the collaborative work between different units within the ministry for the design, delivery, and monitoring of this project. Central levels with decentralized units, regional centers that facilitate I would say the localization or the contextualization for the delivery of the program. So lastly, we have identified the need to strengthen the capacities of pedagogical and technological team to deliver TPD, teacher professional development, by using technologies. So the key issue here is not thinking or transferring existing print or workshop materials to the digital space. It is fundamental to think about the nature and specific characteristics of this space and how professional learning can be achieved. Many thanks, Ivana.
Muchísimas gracias, Dante.
Thank you so much, Dante, for your excellent presentation. So as to have an idea about the way SUMA is working on TPD in Honduras, now we give the floor to Dr. Warrington, Director of the School of Education at the University of the West Indies, member of KIX Advisory Board.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ivana. Good day to everybody. As you can see, I'm somewhat in the dark. Just before the session started, my electricity went. It's still off. So I'm actually using my telephone data to get onto this call. But at the same time, my daughter is using my data also. So if you will permit me to turn my video off, because I fear that the quality may not be the best if the video is on. Colleagues, I'm sharing with you this morning the work that we are going to do on teacher education improvement in the Eastern Caribbean and Barbados. And this is work that is jointly done by the School of Education, the University of the West Indies, Cayfield, Barbados, and SUMA, a great partner coming on board to work with the School of Education. And I really thank SUMA for this effort. I want to say that for like these, they're really important. I'm pleased that we have this KIX community, a community of practice, where we can share the wonderful things that we are doing or thinking about doing. Before I go into what we are going to do about the teacher education program, let me just set the context to let you know a little bit about what we do in the region. So we have the University of the West Indies at Barbados, the Cayfield campus, and we are responsible generally for teacher education in Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean. So at the university, we do a bachelor's in education, which is part of the preparation program. And this is a bachelor's with different strands. So from mathematics education, science education, etc. But in our region, many of the persons who come in to teach, they're not able to afford initially a bachelor's degree. Many persons are going into teaching straight out of secondary school. And so to get them up to the mark, to train them, the first line is to do an associate degree in education at the colleges. So we are talking about 10 colleges across the Eastern Caribbean. And in those 10 colleges, they do associate degrees. And after the associate degree later, they can come into the University of the West Indies to complete their bachelor's. So 2 years for the associate degree, and then an additional 2 years to complete the bachelor's degree. So why are we thinking about reforming our program? I think that is the big question. Why are we thinking about reforming our program? Well, we have seen that what we do is somewhat now in a world that is technologically driven. The technology is ubiquitous, it's pervasive. We are in a region that we are hit by lots of natural disasters. And whenever these natural disasters hit us, like hurricanes, in one country, we're still recovering from a volcanic eruption. It is serious, a major disruption of school. But how do the children learn during this time? Do we have an answer to it? So that's one of the things we have to address in our teacher education program. We have increases in non-communicable diseases, and we're seeing a rise among children, lifestyle diseases. How do we incorporate that into our teacher education program to tackle some of these challenges? But importantly, what we also see is a region that is riddled with poor academic performance. So our regional exam, the CXC, we find that only about 30% of our children, when they leave in secondary school, leave with the required certification that is needed to get into university and into the world of work. So we reckon that, whereas we recognize that there are many things not right with the system, we thought that one of the things that we had to address was teacher education, because we do believe, and this is our major goal, that to improve students' learning, we really need to tackle teacher education, because a good teacher education program translates into better practice by teachers, and then that translates into great improvement, good performance by our children. So that's really what we are trying to do. We are trying to overhaul the teacher education program so that ultimately it will impact our children in the education system. As we do that, we have two broad aims. One is supporting and providing assistance to making better use of international evidence and best practice. We do not want to think that we have all the answers. We believe that we must look outward as well as inward to see what the best practices are, what evidence should lead to our program development. And secondly, we want to become a model. So we want to develop program reform that can be disseminated and adopted by other countries in the global south. So we are seeing ourselves as...
Necesitamos acortar un poco la presentación, que estamos cortos.
We will need you to shorten a bit your presentation, Dr. Warrington, because we're running short on time.
Yes, and I am coming to the end. So to do this, we are proposing developing a program where we will do a literature review of the things to see what are the best practices that can help with our program. And also we're going to do a survey, something of a needs assessment, so that we can see what actually is needed in our program. Then we are going to bring people together to develop the program, and then we are going to implement it in our colleges. But in order to develop, we're going to bring communities, not just a few persons, communities of experts to develop these programs. And then the last thing we plan to do is the monitoring and evaluation. So we want to make sure that this program actually works. We do not just want to develop a program, drop it in the system, and think that that is it. We are going to do the monitoring to make sure that we know what is working, what is not working, where we need to shift, and so forth. Colleagues, as I end, I just want to say that as we think about this program, we have to think about important themes like gender, resilience, equity, sustainable development, technology integration. These are cross-cutting themes that we want to see going through a program. And that's what we would be doing of this program that we are developing.
Muchas gracias, Dr. Warrington.
Thank you very much, Dr. Warrington. I'd like to thank all three speakers for their excellent presentations. Unfortunately, we have run out of time for questions today, but let me hand the microphone back over to our colleagues for the closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Ivana, and to all of the speakers in the sessions. We are a little bit over time, but please bear with us just for a few more minutes as we close out. Apologies again for the video. As was placed in the chat by Tiffany and mentioned by Ivana, the video will be circulated with captions in both English and French. And also thank you to Dr. Warrington for your flexibility with your tech issues as well. Thank you too for the questions. Please do continue to pose these and also be sure to sign up for the KIX newsletter. And this can be found at the bottom of the homepage on the KIX website. And if you have further questions in relation to what has been raised today, please do connect through the general inquiries email on the KIX website, which is kix@idrc.ca. I greatly look forward to the day when there can be a KIX conference that we can share insights from across all the regions and all the projects. And it's very exciting to hear about the policy tractions in both panels, but we do have to move forward and to close. So finally, I am delighted to invite members of the KIX Executive Committee to provide some closing remarks for this year's symposium. First, Nasser Faruqi, Director of Education and Science at the IDRC, and secondly, Margarita Focus-Licht, who is manager of the partnerships team at the GPE. Nasser, over to you, please.
Well, thanks so much, Ian, and good day, everyone. Really thrilled to see the progress that KIX is making despite the challenges of the pandemic. In today's event, we heard how KIX is helping to improve quality and access to education in two key themes in early childhood education in Africa, and as well as teacher professional development in Latin America and the Caribbean. And we hope that you've heard how KIX is responding to country level demands for opportunities to learn from the experiences of other countries and have access to the best evidence and innovation. Through this symposium, I really heard how KIX is building credible, nuanced, and relevant evidence for those country contexts. So I particularly appreciated the focus on early childhood education for children from low-income families, and as well as those with special needs, and the importance of improving the quality of teacher professional development and doing that at scale. We've heard examples from Sierra Leone, from Kenya, from Honduras and West Indies, where people within education systems that are supported by GPE are finding this peer learning and applied research relevant and useful. And we're really, really grateful that you took the time to share your experiences with us. So I really want to thank all of the panelists for your presentations. They were really excellent. So future symposia will highlight more work in Africa, as well as Europe, Asia, and the Pacific. And they'll highlight topics such as improving the quality and the use of data, increasing education options for children who are out of school, and more on advancing gender equality in and through education. In the coming year, we're going to continue to deepen our engagement with countries through the regional hubs that you've heard about today to support inter-country learning, to share evidence, and of course, to support knowledge mobilization. In fact, by the end of the year, we'll have 4 national dialogues in Senegal and Burkina Faso, Benin, and Guinea-Bissau. Someone like the one that Anne Ngatia just described for us today, to anchor KIX activities in national policy and planning processes. IDRC will support the ongoing implementation of the applied research projects. And in fact, early next year, we're going to launch 5 new applied research projects in Africa, as Trish mentioned, that address the challenges of quality early learning. And we're going to look forward to updates and outputs from dozens of other applied research projects that are now underway, and look forward to sharing them with all of you. The final point I really wanted to make is that we're committed to continuing to learn and adapt so that KIX remains anchored in country priorities. One aspect of this is a midterm evaluation of KIX, which has already begun. Some of you online today will be invited to provide your perspectives through surveys or interviews, and I really want to encourage you to take the time to provide that input, because the evaluation will provide insight on how KIX might best adapt and evolve in the next 2 years and potentially beyond, to be even of more value to all of you. So thank you very much, and I'm going to turn it over to Margarita, my colleague from GPE, who's also on the KIX Executive Committee. Thanks.
Thank you, Nazar, for these remarks, and lots of exciting activities ahead. I'm looking forward to seeing how these pan out. Thanks also, Nazar, for the leadership that you provide to KIX and to our collaboration. As Alice emphasized in her opening remarks, acting on evidence is central to GPE's strategy and operating model. And GPE 2025 calls for partners to convene and align around the development and use of evidence to assess and diagnose key policy bottlenecks, to prioritize and align around evidence-based policy solutions that deliver impact at scale, and to work together with partner governments to adapt and learn by tracking results and course correcting during implementation. And as our colleagues from Kenya, Sierra Leone, Honduras, and the West Indies have demonstrated, KIX is bringing evidence into practice and contributing to critical reflections and solutions to policy challenges across our partner countries. From GPE side, we're thrilled to be supporting the progress that has just been described, including the learning exchanges and new applied research projects coming on stream next year. So we invite all partners to join in integrating evidence and policy dialogue. In particular, evidence and promising policy solutions that can be adapted to different contexts across the world and scaled to transform education systems and deliver results for both girls and boys, and especially those who are most vulnerable. So let me close by thanking all the speakers, interpreters, and the many colleagues who helped organize this year's symposium. And I want to also join Alice in thanking the IDRC for bringing KIX to life and enabling all the interesting and exciting initiatives we've heard about today, and many more that you can explore on the KIX website. So finally, thanks also to the more than 250 attendees who have joined today from across the world. I encourage you all to engage with the KIX hubs in your regions and to stay informed about KIX through the KIX website. So thank you, and it's been a wonderful symposium.